somehow it's me. I don't know how.
Thanks, Holly.
Sure.
Cool. I had the first agenda item and the second one. I'll try to keep them briefer so we can get to the other points on the list. Holly, I did also add one at the end for you since you asked
I
for some
saw.
feedback.
Thank you so
Cool.
much. I don't know if anybody had provided it yet. I haven't looked since Friday, but thank you for doing that.
No one had yet, but I figured this was a good chance to come back around to it. So the first thing I wanted to share was just like a cool moment I felt like I had last week, and it tied actually well into Michael Lay's MR he's working on. But I see Kai from the code review group, the PM. He's really, really skillful about saying no, specifically by tying in data that we can pull from GitLab itself. So I was tripping over this design decision of whether to use like a text area for an input or just like a regular form input, because we were concerned about the namespace length between like the group, the subgroup, and the project becoming so long that it would extend past the input form. So like, why don't I just ask an engineer to help me figure out if that would be likely? We didn't pull back all the data. I think it would take way too long to do that, but he pulled a good sample size between like a lot of starred projects. I think it was like hundreds, if not maybe 1,000 records or so. None of them had names, had like a namespace or a project full name, which I think is what it's called in our backend, that was longer than 60 characters. So this seems like something that would be over engineering for a smaller size of the user base. So it's possible that maybe some of our staging environments might be annoying to see the full length, but since we decided to not disable pasting, and since we were saying this is a less frequent problem, it made that design decision easier. So I'm trying to be better about this, asking more quantitative questions to engineers that can help me pull back those insights. So if that's helpful to anybody for like an idea that might give for you, I just wanted to share that.
Good insight.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next one, I'll share my screen for this. I brought this up several months ago, and it was just kind of like a first foray into thinking about how we might configure this ability to stream audit events outside of GitLab. So if you're not familiar with audit events, it's a feature that's in GitLab Premium, and it's tracking various events that are happening in GitLab and logging them at a central location. One of the unique constraints with audit events is our database isn't particularly set up well for a massive influx of data, which means that we don't actually show all the events that we'd like to. An example of this would be like push events. We don't capture all of those actions. It's just too many for our database to handle. But we would love to be able to help send this data elsewhere. So there are audits in which you have to know this event information, and what people are doing today is like building custom scripts to pull this data out of GitLab or asking GitLab themselves to help aggregate this information. So we had a MVC of a backend API only. You basically just say, this is where I want to send the data. Here's the URL. And then here's my group ID, pull the events for it. And so kind of the next question is, well, how do we start integrating that backend feature, assuming it starts polling well with our user base? Yeah.
Can I pause you real quick? You're showing, or I
my
see
calendar.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I've pulled up the Figma file, but if you're trying to like compare what you're saying with what's, thank you.
The good news is I wasn't actually walking through anything yet. So that's great. But thank you for correcting me, Holly, so we could get into the visuals because that was coming next.
I thought you were going to spit on that, Austin, somehow.
Yeah.
Integrate Google Calendar, but anyways, yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, this is what audit events looks like today. You can access it in the admin area and the group level on the project. And so what I was thinking of were a couple different options to try and introduce it. I'm just trying to figure out what maybe makes the most sense in terms of an MVC approach of being able to iterate into something over several milestones that's more comprehensive, but also isn't super complex, and we'll still want to be able to validate something with users in terms of the way you would set it up. So the first thing I was thinking is, while we have this backend only feature, is using a banner to create awareness of how users can set this up by following our documentation. as just a call to action of like, hey, you can start actually sending this data and more outside of GitLab if you'd like to. And then once we're ready to start building the front end aspect, one way I thought about doing this was I'm calling this like the tab view. So one tab for setting up the view with just seeing all the information presented in a table as your log, and then a page for streams. So you can go over to the stream, get a call to action to go set it up. Following a similar pattern to what we do with webhooks, we might not be able to do all these things in MVC. It might just literally just be the destination URL. But ideally, maybe we also are keeping like the secret token as an option, doing SSL verification. I'd love to be able to allow users eventually to pick specific events they want to send externally, but our small MVC that we have now is you're just getting everything, and it can be a lot. So you got to be really ready for it. And then I want to be able to present back to the user a way to know like the status of these things, this is very similar to webhooks, which I know is closer to Lever's world. So there's some other ideas that go with that. So I've got this like tab view that I was thinking through. Another one was like maybe just keeping it all on one page. So like tying the buttons on the same page to try and create a similar experience. I think the downside of this is they end up sharing like the same real estate. So it could put priority over one over the other, depending on like the location that they're living in. And if you have a lot of streaming destinations set up, it could conflate the experience a bit. We don't necessarily know how many users are going to use, which is what we're hoping to learn from this backend effort is like, are users setting up like one, or are they setting up like 100 destinations to send this information to, which I think could maybe help inform one way or the other. But the other ways I was thinking about setting up was like we could try and tie directly into webhooks by like adding an additional trigger for audit events. And Libor, I've presented this design to you before as like an idea, just being able to pick it as a specification and kind of build off of their existing like project hook design style, the way that you test it, edit it, and manage those things. And one other way I was thinking about doing it, I'm just trying to get as many options out there as possible. There's a configuration section in security and compliance, and security and testing is the most like verbose one right now, but I was thinking about adding one for specifically audit events that would give you a call to action for like setting up your streaming destination, and then eventually being able to bring the form inside of the app itself, being able to allow you to customize it from there. Long-winded way of saying these are the different variations I was thinking of being able to help users set up their destination to stream audit events. Do any of those particularly stand out well to you, or do you have a thoughtful idea of how I can help validate a good configuration path with our user base?
Yeah, Austin, I'm curious. One thing that comes to mind is, have you guys done any like problem validation on this yet? Do you have any specific clients or customers in mind that have this problem that you could maybe reach out to and maybe user test with? Do like a kind of like preliminary like solution validation with them?
Yep. So we did some preliminary validation with 2 or 3 customers, I want to say earlier last spring and summer, to talk about this idea of sending the event data outside of GitLab. We got like a lot of good thumbs up. Like, yes, we definitely want to be able to take some of this data, especially if you're not going to give it to us in GitLab. Some even said that that would be preferable to GitLab because they coalesce all of their data together in like Splunk or something. And they look at a more holistic list. So not just like the GitLab data, but also data from AWS or other applications as well. So being able to bring it all into their own data warehouse to them was preferable. I will say in terms of our competitor products, one had already set up a similar feature to this that also lets you stream data to preferred partners. And then another one released a beta of this exact same feature. It's not in their UI yet, it's just all API as well. So we're getting indicators from both our competition and from our customers that being able to take the log data out of GitLab is definitely useful. I think where we're standing at is how do we make sure that we make this a seamless experience in GitLab so that users, A, have awareness of it, but B, can get to the goal of actually getting their data where they want to go as quickly as possible.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I would think about, maybe trying to show customers some of these concepts,
Mhm.
thinking maybe. And maybe even vet it by engineering. My gut is that maybe that webhook way is maybe not the most elegant way that exists today, but somehow
Mhm.
it might be the easiest for an MVC, like technically, but I might be wrong. So it might be a good idea to kind of get some what do you call it?
Yeah.
Technical feasibility there.
Yeah, one of the struggles I see with integrating specifically with webhooks, Libor, is there's like a lot of rich features by being able to test specific event types. You're getting back the statuses and everything as well, being able to manage them more complexly. Ours is like so much bare bones right now. We'd have to strip away functionality. Like we're not gonna be able to do testing or like probably be able to communicate the status super well just yet. Like I'd love to be able to come back and be like, yes, you gotta get 200 response from this API, but that may not happen right away. Right now, it's just kind of like you're blindly sending events, and currently you're dependent on your API to provide you that feedback. And we're just starting to figure out how can we start exposing that a little bit more in the UI. So that's maybe the one thing that steers me away from webhooks. But at the same time, I understand that they're kind of a similar technology. It just kind of sucks that they're so far apart from each other.
Got it.
I had something.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say I had something in regards not so much to the problem, but more so the way you visualize the problem.
Sure,
You scroll
please.
down, scroll down one of the images, maybe more. Yeah, there.
Was it
These
in the
images.
configuration? Mhm.
Yeah, it feels like it's so much data just crushed into half the screen.
Oh yeah, I agree. One of the
I don't
things we
know.
have not figured out yet is how can we like let users better pick the events that they care about, which is why we're starting with you just get everything right now. So this would be more of a visionary, like we have to try and figure out a better way because there are so many events and they're only going to grow. Like think about any action you can do in GitLab, that's probably going to eventually become an audit event. So we don't necessarily know what that the best way is going to be right now. This is just the events that we have listed in our documentation for groups and projects right now. So it's not very scalable, but the scalable idea, at least to start, is being able to send everything. And that's up to users, whether they have the hardware that can meet that volume of events for their specific environment. And we're just kind of giving that option to them. They can take it or they could just not. GitLab can continue to handle it. But the thing that we've been struggling with over the past, well, I guess year and a half that this feature's kind of been active is we just don't have the infrastructure to really scale very well to the volume of events that we'd like to track. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Austin, I'm wondering, do you mind after linking the issue to this? I saw you linked just the Figma file. I guess the Figma file also has a link to the actual issue.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
I have
don't
some
know if
other
that.
thoughts on this that I might add, like later this week.
Yeah, I'll have to make sure that's the right issue number. It might not be, possibly. Because I think the initial thing was like a design to like go show customers, and we did that. So I closed that issue, and I might still be using that same Figma file. There's another issue to like the first MVC for the front end of the backend feature that we built. And I think that's the next thing I got to go populate. But I only got around to getting all my ideas down on paper.
Got it.
Holly's putting in a note about the add stream button.
Yeah, just that, and I'm sorry, this is a tiny little detail in the larger questions you were asking, but I just happened to notice it, so I thought I would mention it. The add stream button is using, I guess, the tertiary styles. I was curious in that example. It's not all.
It's just it's the default, but it may be the contrast on your screen is much brighter and it's not as visible. Yeah, the thing that I was struggling with on this page is I don't know what the primary action is. Like, I don't want to say for a user coming to audit events that the primary action is to add a stream. It is a great secondary feature if that's something that your organization cares about. Primarily, I think what's most valuable is the data and the table itself. So that's why I was leaning towards ad stream being the default here, whereas like when I had the split view, I could confidently say like this would be the primary action here because you either want to add streams or you want to manage the ones that you see on your page, helping divide some of the action up a little bit as opposed to having to like share the same real estate and deal with conflicting interests of who cares about what the most.
That makes perfect sense. I think it definitely should be related to what the primary action is for the user, as opposed to just because it says add or create, make it primary. So thank you for explaining that. I did link, though, in case it's relevant to anybody else's work as well, that there is an ongoing conversation about specifically the verbiage of add versus create and when we're using those. So there's an issue there. If anybody has thoughts on that, I don't want to.
I'm gonna follow that for sure. Thanks for sharing it, Holly. I'm gonna use it because I was like struggling. Do I use create? Do I say new stream, add stream? I don't know. What verb are we doing these days?
I went through and captured as many examples as I could and just a brief overview of the location for each of those just to show the differences. And we've got problems beyond that. We've got problems with style. You see some are still using the green, some are, it's just kind of all over the place. There is a good bit of consistency, but there's a lot of opportunity there too. And I don't know how helpful that chart is, but I just wanted to kind of quickly capture some of the examples I saw. But feel free to comment on that as well if that's helpful.
Will do. This was helpful. You at least gave me some ideas of ways to rethink some of the UI presentation, leave more things for the reinforcement of going back to customers and trying to validate things. I think where I'd probably go from here is, again, updating the issue, like I said, and then maybe just picking one. And like you said, just running it by some customers and then maybe looking at our usage of the backend feature that we've created to help guide maybe with the selection of which one we test. All right. Nick made his point read only, both of them, I guess.
All right. Well, then would that be me, the next one? Thank you so much again, Austin, for reposting that. Let me share my screen really quick. Got too much stuff open here. So we recently pivoted when it comes to work items and kind of broke up the groups. It was, go ahead and share, project management and product planning working together to create the new work item view. And long story short, we've kind of split those groups now so that we're each focusing on specific parts, and project management is focusing on the new work item detail view, which we have been the entire time. And then product planning is going to be focusing on sort of the relational aspect between work items, the hierarchy, like child elements and how things relate to one another and dependencies between one another. So one of the things that we're looking to do for MVC from the just work item core view concept is, instead of going with a feature for the first work item, which was our initial plan, we are now going to make it a task. And one of the most requested features in project management from our users is we want the ability to have an issue and then a child element of an issue that would be a task. So we will be working with product planning from the child aspect of this. But one of the ways we're looking to potentially surface this opportunity in the UI of converting something to a task or creating a work item that is a child element is through the checklist. So we currently have, unfortunately, a concept of tasks, which is a task list. So that's going to be a little tricky to kind of deal with the verbiage challenge there. But what we're looking to do is offer a way for someone to quickly convert one of these items to a task, which is going to be using that new work item layout again. And this is something that GitHub offers, and I believe Trello offers, just this way to quickly convert one of these things to a child element of an issue. So this is the default state of that. I just wanted to get it on there and just be able to look at it as I explored options. And I've got 5 options here total that I kind of explored. Some I definitely like better than others. And then this one, the thought was that as someone hovers over each of these items, it pushes it. Now, I don't like the bounciness that would have to happen there, the back and forth, but it was something that popped into my mind, and I just wanted to go ahead and get it in front of me and explore it so I could, if nothing else, kind of invalidate it as a potential opportunity. My goal in that was that it would always be in a consistent location, as opposed to putting it on the right side where it might be dependent on the length of the content, unless we do a bit more of a tabular approach where we kind of stop that line at some point, force a wrap, and then show the button to the right of that, which I did explore as well. So that was the thought in this. You hover over it, you just get the option to make it a task, you click on it, and then potentially it would go ahead and convert it to a task. Now, while exploring this, I did see some interesting feedback from users of GitHub who have they don't have the left align approach, but they do have an approach where when you click the option to convert it to a task, it's an immediate transition, and people are accidentally doing that. And so people were complaining, can I just turn this off? Because I don't want to convert it to a task, but it's happening just as I navigate the UI. So I took that into consideration too. The second example is putting it on the right, which is a bit more common. I had a really good conversation with Mike Nichols the other day about this. And he was like, we force everything to happen on the right, but why couldn't it happen on the left as well? Because I did explore that too. And I'll show that example in a moment. But similar case here, it's on the right. And I'm thinking in this case too, we would have all of them align in the same place. So it would be kind of a table approach, as opposed to having it kind of appear down here for the shorter one and on the end for the other. And you're kind of having to always hunt for it a little bit. This is the same approach, but just using an icon as opposed to a button. I love the succinct approach of icons, but I also don't like the fact that they're not quite as, check the time, they're not quite as clear to the users. So that was just something else to explore. Currently, this is the winner, and this is the one that I think I prefer as well, at least in terms of how it surfaces in the UI, is showing an ellipsis. There is an option here to remove. I don't think we're going to offer that for MVC, but we do want to offer other options potentially in the future, such as adding assignees or something else related. So this gives us a bit more room to grow the opportunities and options related to these lines. So that was part of what was being explored there. Finally, this was putting everything on the left. So something we do want to offer eventually, not for MVC, is the ability to drag and reorder these items. So I wanted to just put it in here and see kind of how it would look with those things side by side, even though that won't be MVC. The problem with having it on the left is that I don't know that it would be quite as discoverable, because I do think that people have become trained to look for this information on the right side. However, it's always in a consistent location. It's not necessarily in the way and interfering with the readability of the content, because not all people want to convert. Some people just want to see that list as a list of things. But it doesn't also have an impact when you do have a really long task like this. Again, it kind of stays out of the way. So that was something that I think the PM likes, is having it on the left, but using that ellipsis approach and providing a popover with a menu. But that's kind of the first 5 options that I've been exploring. I'm also looking into what it looks like when it has been converted. So showing probably an icon to help differentiate between it and just a regular link. I have a question of whether or not that's important to the user. Doesn't matter. I mean, currently, if you convert an issue to a link and you specifically give it link text, then it shows just this. Otherwise, I think it resolves to just the ID. So kind of asking questions surrounding that. Also showing if somebody hovers over one, maybe that it has been applied as a task. So you can see that that's the case to help further differentiate. And then just showing like an edit, and the delete state we're not going to worry about for now. Edits, because it is markdown, just going to be kind of standard markdown approach and what surfaces there when you have converted something. I'm trying to rush it because I know we have 2 minutes left. So I'd love any feedback that you all have, or if you have any questions as well.
I like the idea of mixing the make task button and the drag and drop, putting both on the left under the empty option heading space.
Over here?
Yeah, where it says option 2, 3, 4, 5. They have that empty white space.
Mhm.
Putting the buttons there, but the make task toggle, or not the toggle, but the actual button,
Mhm.
and perhaps hiding its visibility only upon hover, so that it shows on hover that it makes tasks. Another thing that I don't know if it makes sense to add or not, having two actions, but a toggle switch for make task, including the checkbox. So you have a toggle switch, then the checkbox, then the copy.
Mhm.
But that's just my quick ideas.
And you're saying to put make task over here, but then
No,
separately copy
everything on the left.
everything on the left. Okay.
Yeah, like it is here. Because that
Mhm.
way it keeps all the actions in one location and you don't have this problem where it's
Mhm.
floating out in space by itself.
That's what I think too. I like having it all in one place. It's always going to be there, no movement and no interruption in the flow if you're looking at the other content. I was just concerned that people have become so trained in seeing it on the right that there might be a challenge. I know we're at time, so thank you so much, Daniel, for your feedback. I'd love to hear feedback from anybody else, but I actually posted a link, so if you want to share async in the Figma file, I'd love to hear it. Thank you all so much.
Holly, you want me to dump those questions that I had in the Figma file, or you want to just take them from the Google Doc?
Oh, I'll just respond in the Google Doc. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much, Austin. All right,
Great.
have a great
Thank
day.
you.
See you
Bye.
soon.
Everyone, bye.